I wanted to quote what the Marchesa Casati once said, which was that she wanted to make of herself a living work of art. I was wondering, do you relate dressing and living as a kind of performance art?
I don't know. You know, the thing is, I don't think you can be objective about yourself, and I think if you, I mean, it's an interesting thing to go and say, because I think if you say it, then you're already too self-conscious. And to have an aim like that is not an artistic aim, in my view. I don't know. I mean, I think art is something, people say, what do you do? And I don't even dare say I'm in the arts, because it's up to other people to say if you're in the arts or not, or whatever. People love labels. I think the Marchesa Casati was extraordinary in so many ways, but I think it's sort of like kind of. I think if you become too self-conscious, or if you make it, I mean, if you have to have a million stylists, or you have to have, you know, if you're sort of running through looks like no tomorrow, I mean, there comes a point where it's sort of slightly desperate, and that's not artistic. I think it has to sort of grow. I may be wrong. I mean, there are definitely different sorts of art. I mean, I'm no expert, but I mean, I've had the same things for years and years and years and years. Even if I didn't wear them when I was, you know, when I was having children and stuff, I had them. I was just collecting them, and I don't change. I mean, it's just like I don't sort of suddenly go through. You know, I don't suddenly think, oh wow, I'm just going to, you know, it's going to be short skirts or something like that. So fashion, actually, I don't find that very interesting. I find the idea of being able to transform yourself, because we can, because we're human beings, that's interesting.
I read as well that you grew up in, or at least spent part of your childhood in Cadaqués, and Dali was your next door neighbour?
We lived in a chapel up the mountain, and still do, and he lived in Portigat, which was down by the sea, and my mother was, I think she was, her first husband was his only pupil, and he was her great mentor. And there was also Man Ray, and there was also Duchamp, and there was, I mean, he died when I was 1, so.
Spending part of your childhood in that kind of community is bound to shape your aesthetic and shape your approach to life and to art and things like that.
Definitely, because there were 3 sections. There were the locals, there were the artists, and then there were the pilgrims that would sort of come and kind of try and, I don't know, be part of the scene. And quite a lot of them sort of just ended up staying there. A lot of people living in caves all over the mountains, quite kind of, and it was completely normal. And but when I sort of tried to describe, you know, when you had to write your sort of essay, your first essay in September, my summer holiday, I mean, everybody else said, you know, I went to sort of somewhere incredibly normal, and I'd sort of write these things, and they'd think I was lying. So it was just absolutely awful. So I sort of had to kind of try and skip that essay, or not be there for the first day. Looking back on it, yes, it was a very different childhood, but it wasn't, I'm so glad it wasn't sort of Marbella or Saint-Tropez. I mean, there is not a shop there. I mean, you can buy espadrille, you can buy bread, and you can buy, you know, just the basics, and that's it. There's not one boutique, there's nothing. And it's not trendy, which is fantastic. I'm glad I've had such a disparate upbringing. I'm really glad, because I mean, it's sort of endlessly fascinating. Wouldn't it be just awful if you just kind of like lived in kind of, you know, isolated splendor and sort of never seen any of this? And some of those people, you know, the people that one met when I was a child anyway, had still today have an enormous influence on me.
Can you remember the first piece of haute couture that you bought?
Yes.
Have you still got it?
Yes, I do. And it still fits. And it was cut by Mr. Paquito, who was a cutter at Chanel at the time. And it looks great. And And then I have I have one of the first pieces. Well, one of the pieces from the first La Croix exhibition. I mean, the first
the 87.
Yeah.
Oh.
Pony skin, you know.
And I think it's that particular moment as well in the 80s, and that haute couture moment was an incredible moment for fashion and for sort of for luxury. And
yeah,
for this
and
idea
people
of
didn't know about couture really. I mean, you know, people thought that pret-a-porter and couture were the same things. They didn't realise that in fact it was a much smaller thing, and actually very few. I mean, just few editors would go. But it would be mainly friends there. It wouldn't be kind of, it wasn't what it is now. Because now it's become sort of ubiquitous and everybody sort of, you know, and that's where it gets its bad name from. But in fact, that's the living soul of dressmaking and of clothes. I mean, I know that, and it's true, because some clothes are clothes, and I think there may be one example, which is art, McQueen. But it depresses me because people get, you know, just always dressed in haute couture. I mean, honestly, some of my things that are couture, I bought in Portobello Market, and then I sort of rearranged it myself. You know what I mean? And you just think, hang on a second. I mean, can't you tell the difference?
You talk about the system of fashion, and you know it is a system, and you're getting things now where people are showing things, and then you can buy them straight away after the show. The great thing about haute couture is that it's the antithesis of that.
And you have to engage. You have to engage, and you have to you have to make a commitment to, you know, going for fittings, or even if you're making it yourself. I mean, you've got to put in some work, and I mean, couture people think couture just means expensive, and that's completely wrong. I mean, yes, you know, if you are buying something that's you know beaded from head to foot by Lesage, of course it's expensive. But I mean, it's no different from having a sort of bespoke suit made in Savile Row or anywhere, or in Hong Kong. Couture, you know, in France it has rules that it follows, but it also is it's part of our civilization,
which I think as well is something a lot of people aren't aware of with couture. Like you said, they don't realise you're not paying for the name, you're paying for the
but a lot of
artisan
people,
and the concentration of the work.
Yeah, and I think it shows. I mean, it's funny, the more intention that you put into something, the more that you can see it. I think anybody who sort of like just runs something off very, very quickly and just writes their name on it, you can see it. And the more you concentrate on something, the more of yourself is invested in it. And even if you just make one, which is about all I can manage normally, but it's you know, it just means so much more. And unless I could do it and be able to talk about it, and be able to I mean, honestly swear that it's something that you have invested yourself in, it doesn't mean anything, you know. And I don't know, the thing about couture, which I find very, very sad, and I did think that I have the highest respect for Pierre Berger, but I did think that this thing about in the late 80s, early 90s, when they were shutting all the couture houses in Paris, it was very sad, because it was, you know, 200-300 years worth of families that knew how to make lace, that knew how to sew. I mean, these are industries, these are jobs. This is not just about rich people putting on something so that they can look better than everybody else. It really isn't about that.
We've talked a lot about kind of history and haute couture and the tradition of that, but I'm also interested in the fact that you're incredibly supportive of people like Gareth, and you were on the Dorchester Award, and you know, this kind of support of new talent.
I like young designers. I think that's the way forward. Yes, the sort of Chanel Dior that whole thing worked in the 70s, and I think that will continue to work. But what I don't like is the idea, apart from I think Sarah's doing a fantastic job with McQueen, but stuff like saying, okay, fine, let's find an old house. Oh, Poirot, yeah, and then we'll put a new design. Just like let's have a new designer. That's that's 21st century, not just sort of resuscitating old houses, because you can't find the women to work there anymore, or the men. And also, isn't it more interesting to have new houses rather than dead designers?
The fashion industry is an industry built on the new, but a lot of the time people are so afraid of anything genuinely new in fashion.
Well, I think the suits don't get it. I just think they don't understand a thing about fashion, and you can see. And it's the same with film. As soon as, I mean, I'm not saying that, I mean, of course you need money in order to do things, but you don't need, the thing is, don't hire someone for their name. You hire someone for their talent. And if you start trying to change that, hire someone else or do it yourself. But don't muddle in with the artistic process too much, because you can really crush an artist. I mean, they're pretty sensitive. And also the amount that they're supposed to sort of shove out every year, you know, from accessories to glasses to, you know, whatever. I mean, of course they're going to have a meltdown. It's impossible. I would hate to be a designer or have to do you know, many collections.
So I wanted to talk about the glove. Well, can you explain a little bit?
You know what it was? Is I hate going to parties. I get really nervous. A, I'm always on my own, and B, or I'm with Sean, or I was with Lee, or I'd be with Philip. Thank God. I mean, that's why it's sort of lovely to be called a socialite, because if only, I mean, I sort of keep thinking, it makes me sound as if I'm terribly confident, sort of like walking into a room. No, I don't think so. But anyway, so we were standing in a corner one night about 5 years ago saying, God, I hate it. Oh, God, I really hate it. And then Lee was there going, God, I hate this too. God, I said, I just want to make a suit of armour. So Sean said, well, we could start. And I said, well, yeah. Anyway, so that's how it happened. And sort of, you know, 3 weeks later, there was my arm in a bucket of plaster. And it sort of it started from there, and I mean it has developed, and it was always to do with being against or feeling that the world was quite a dangerous place, and also it's not what I dislike about jewellery. I mean, I love jewellery, but it doesn't have to be real. But I dislike the sort of idea of it sort of being, you know, like a price tag around someone's neck. You know, it needs to be something else, you know, and there is something extremely magical about armour.
Has it been like a process then of reworking the idea over and over and getting it to a kind of perfect point?
I mean, it's just like, you know, open my big fat mouth and I end up changing the flipping windows at Barney's, you know, and that was a joke, because I was supposed to I wanted Izzy to be in New York when Lee was there, so I thought, great, so I was with Dennis Friedman. And then I said, oh, and I could change in the window. And then as the day approached, I thought, yikes, because this is about, you know, these are my dead friends. These are my best friends, and they're dead. And I said to Dennis, I do not want a glass of water out of this, because you know what? It's a commercial space, and it's a fine line. And also, I'm not someone that's used to being in front of a lot of people. I just, you know, on set, fine, real people, terrifying. So I don't know, I mean, I cried off all my mascara in the car, and just sort of, I went from the last look I did for Lee into Sarah, and then basta. I mean, the idea of me having my hair, I mean, Jesus, if anyone tried to see me doing my hair and makeup, it's, you know, it's trial and error. I mean, so I just sort of slid across the table. I was covered in scratches, I mean, for weeks. I mean, I still got marked. But anyway, got through it.
Well, the last thing that I wanted to talk about, which is something that we vaguely talked about before the stream started, was the exhibition at FIT.
Oh, wow. That was put to me about 2 years ago, and of course I put it at the back of my head, and I thought, well, it's in 2 years, and it's going to be nothing. And the more it approaches, the more I think, oh my God. Anyway, they've taken most of my stuff, and
Because you co-curated it with Valerie Steele.
Yeah. She's fantastic. Really, really great lady. It's for the students. That's why I stopped the Izzy sale, really. It's because I want to do, after the FIT thing, I'd kind of like to do an online. I didn't know how to do it, but by that stage, maybe I'll have the sort of a way to do it. But for sure with Julia involved, her sister, because people forget she had a sister and a family and friends that actually liked her. Not all these death wagon people who sort of like, you know, they all will appreciate everybody as soon as they snuffed it, but you know, when they're around, niente. And so I thought, well, if I get that online, and because you know, if you're in New Zealand, you'll be able to, because she had a fantastic sense of style. And it definitely needs to be kept separate from mine, because we're two different people. I just did it, was really just to stop the sort of kind of...
I remember reading you saying just the idea that you don't want people swooping in and getting, you know,
well, yeah, and also,
mementos.
But now it's a kind of hot potato, because it's not for me to be the guardian of the flame. But so that's why I want her family to be involved. And I also think that the people who have made money out of it have already done it. And I think as a record of her and what she did for British fashion and art is quite extraordinary. And I think she'd be very, very happy with this. Is that I think that especially for the artists that would have lost a lot of their archives, it would be great, and to show younger designers, people that are interested online, something, because people very rarely do that. I'll try and make it not a completely sort of like bottomless pit of kind of losing money, but free, so that people don't have to, I mean, you know, because everything costs something these days. I mean, why not do something good for a change?